Visit Avery.com, Avary, for the most up-to-date news and information on Team Avery.
Avery, 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 Avery,
This is the Gala Show. I'm your reporter on the beat, Gala Avery. On this episode, my guest today is a trauma-informed intimacy coach. She specializes in helping women over 30 break free of the rut of people-pleasing and step into their true power by embracing vulnerability and setting healthy boundaries. She's a coach, a teacher, a trainer, a writer, and a mother. But here on the Gala Show, I know her as one of the most energetic, full-of-life ladies I know, Krystal Centinello. Hey, Krystal.
Hey, Gala. That's a great introduction.
Thank you. Well, I have a great person sitting in front of me, so it was really easy for me to write.
Thank you.
So before I bring up the topic for today, I have a question for you. You wrote a book called Diadem, Crowning of the Lioness, and it's a compilation of poetry that chronicles your own journey. So I wanted to ask, how important is the written word, be it poetry or journaling, to finding your personal voice?
That's a great question. Really. And ironically, I was actually thinking about voice today. I think everyone's different. Mm-hmm. So I can speak to myself, and I'm sure you as a writer can also relate. But I think my first experience with journaling and writing as far as finding my voice was what I call like relieving the monkey mind. Right. So like,
I like that term.
The mind where it just like spins and spins and spins, and you're, like, and as women, I feel like there's a lot of rumination that is very common amongst us. And I could feel, like my head was spinning and I had all these thoughts and I just wasn't able to make sense of them. Mm-hmm. So with the written word, I would grab a journal and I would just write everything that was going on in my mind. And it reminds me of the scene from Harry Potter where Dumbledore takes the wand and he points it to his brain and he pulls out the memories and puts them into the pensive. And it gives you clarity to leave in the mind what's important and release everything else. For me, what I was going through was after my divorce, I was really things that were coming into light was the trauma that I experienced and what that was like to be physically free from it, but not emotionally and mentally free from it.
You're still living there, like in the past in your own mind.
Yes. And many of the poems say like, I'm still here. There's a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And I was just writing to release what was going on, to get an idea of what I was experiencing. Mm-hmm. And after a couple of years, I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, this tells a story. This tells a story of where I used to be to where I am now, this strong lioness. And I felt like, the beginning of the book, it's like a puppy. Right? Mm-hmm. You start off with this idea of what love is going to be, and they call it puppy love.
Yeah.
And you're just, eyes are wide and you are open to all the possibilities. And in order to build strength, you have to go through some of the hard things. Mm-hmm. And you also have to find your voice and not listen to everyone else's voice around you. And I think coming back to your original question, I was so in tune with what everyone else wanted, what everyone else's thoughts or shoulds were of how you should feel or how you should be in a relationship, that it wasn't until I could put pen to paper, and many of my poems were literally pen to paper, not typing them, I could finally feel like this is what I want. This is what I believe. And I even tell my daughters, I'm like, you're going through something. I'm like, take out a pencil and paper or pen and paper, write it down. I really feel like the journaling process, the writing process helps bring clarity to what your voice is.
I agree. I mean, I talk with people sometimes, especially guys, to be honest, who tell me like they want to express their feelings and that they want to write things down and they just feel like it won't be good enough, and I put that in air quotes, or like they can't express it, and I always just tell people, like, just do it. Your journal is only for you. No one else is supposed to read it. That's why like diaries have a lock and key. And also, there is no barrier with poetry. I feel like even if it's not like the greatest piece ever written, you can still write it and then workshop it and just get your feelings out. That's the most important thing.
I completely agree. I've worked for a majority of my career. I've worked with students between the ages of 5 and 13. And many of them who've experienced dyslexia. So their language-based is challenging. And so I find poetry to be something that is easier for them because they don't have to worry about punctuation and grammar necessarily. And I also, going back to that idea of pen and paper, sometimes feelings are hard to express in a word or words. And for those men you've talked to, or even children or whomever, just putting pencil to paper and scribbling.
I have some journal entries in like my journal where like it'll be like all neatly written, and the next page I'm like really mad about something, and it's like big letters, I'm not in lines, and it's like, you know what, you're allowed to do that when you put pen to paper.
Absolutely.
It feels so good.
I think a really fun exercise is to be like, how are you feeling today? And express it pencil or pen to paper without words and see what that looks like.
Oh my God. See all the scribbles or the color, or
jagged edges,
or like the curly
swirls.
cues, or like a sunshine, or like little cat drawings. I always put little cat drawings everywhere. I think like I sign things sometimes and I'll put a cat drawing like in like letters.
Now I can't wait to meet your cat.
I know. Now, as always, my guest gets to bring their topic to the mic. Krystal, why don't you tell us what your topic is and why you decided to choose it?
Well, thank you. So my topic is people pleasing. And I've chosen it I'll give you one reason of many, but it's something that I've dealt with on my own. And I feel like so many people deal with, whether they realize it or not. And going back to the original question about the book and my voice, it took me a long time to find my voice.
Yeah.
Because I was an expert people pleaser. And I lived for everyone else's voice but my own. So I'd love to talk about it and just, maybe bring some awareness to people who might not even realize they're people pleasing and how to step out of it. But before we get into the topic, it's time for a commercial break.
Back by popular demand, the Video Archives merch store is up and running. Get your favorite t-shirts, hats, notebooks, stickers, and more at videoarchivesmerch.com. You know me. I write all my notes in the Notes on Cinema notebook, the Gala edition, of course. Check out videoarchivesmerch.com to get yours today. Hey, thanks so much for being a loyal listener. If you want to keep up with me off mic, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Gala Avery.
And we're back.
You heard it here. We are going to be talking about people pleasing. I have 30 minutes on the clock and our time starts now. I feel like I've definitely been a people pleaser in my life at certain points, and it has been something that I've actively been trying to step away from because I realize the first person I have to make sure is happy is myself, which I feel like when you're people pleasing, you're kind of stretched really thin. And how can you do anything for anyone else if you're not at 100%?
Absolutely. I think a lot of times, though, everything that you're saying is so true. And it's that analogy of put your mask on first before helping somebody else. And many of us have been conditioned for a variety of reasons to help somebody with their mask first.
Yes. Especially, I think, parents. I think actually Parent of Airplane, they show on the thing, like the parent putting their mask on first before they help their child, because really, like, a parent's first instinct is going to save your child first and like throw yourself on top of your child. Like James at rowing was telling me when the earthquakes happened, the first thing he and his wife did were jump on their children.
Aww.
I know. And I thought that was so sweet because I'm like, you guys are good parents. You guys are like doing it. But how do you identify that you are people pleasing? Because I feel like we also live in an area where there are a lot of narcissists that think that like it should all be about them. And so you have these people that are like on demand people pleasing. And then you have these people that are like, well, I have to put myself first and I have to do this. And there's like a middle ground to that.
Yeah, no, it is. So that's the thing. It is a really tricky line. The narcissist is never going to identify it. Never, period. They're always right. They never do anything wrong. Let's make that very clear. We can talk another time about how you identify a narcissist and get out of that relationship.
Get them out of your life.
Especially as you're dating, Gala.
You've heard some of my dating stories. You understand what I'm going through.
Exactly.
Yes.
But, identifying you're a people pleaser, it's interesting. Burnout is a big sign. If you're feeling burnt out, that might be one of them. You might also be an overachiever. So like, okay, so what's the difference between I'm doing too much because I'm overachieving and I'm doing too much because I'm trying to make everyone else happy. And a lot of times that like making everyone else happy is because it makes me feel validated. I think a question to ask is, am I saying yes when I really want to say no? Does this feel like an obligation, or is this something that gives me energy at the end of the task or partway through the task or, activity, whatever you want to call it or label it? And I'll give you an example. Like a friend of mine called me up and was like, hey, I'm going through something right now. Will you come out and get a drink with me? And I'm like, of course, I'll be there. Like, I love you. What do you need? Whatever. That is like, I'm thinking, I'm not doing it to please her. I'm doing it because that's just something I want to do. And by the end of the, time that we hung out, I still felt energized. I felt like I did something great. I felt like I was able to help her. However, the same friend could call me on a different day. This actually happened to me this week. A friend called me. She's like, Krystal, do you have time to talk right now? And I was like, I could make it. But honestly, like my website is down. It's not working right now. I have to do A, B, and C. And I knew at the end of it, it wasn't that I didn't love my friend. I didn't want to be there for my friend, but I knew I would have felt frustrated because I didn't spend the time on me that I really needed to, whether it was for my business or whatever. And had I put the priorities for myself aside, that would have been people pleasing.
Yeah, because you're doing it in order to please someone else and make sure that they're okay before yourself. And if you're 100% and able to do it, of course, as a good friend. That's the other thing is in these situations, these are people that are actually your friends that I'm sure it's a give and take with friendship. Because there are people where they'll take.
Absolutely.
And a people pleaser can be really comfortable in those take situations because it's like you're just always doing stuff for other people.
Yeah.
I also feel, though, that, like, there are people that do things for others expecting something back. And then there are people that do things for others just because they like to do things for others.
1,000%. Like, the do things for others and expect something back. I've had enough experience with that. And, when I got into my relationship with my husband now, he is such a giver. He's
amazing.
Thank you. I think so. And I was really hesitant to let him do anything for me because I had too many of those strings attached experiences before.
And that can also make you kind of close up your vulnerability and like completely go into your shell.
Absolutely. And talking about vulnerability, I was thinking about this too in the people pleasing. Like the other part of people pleasing and identifying whether or not you're doing it is, are you being authentic? Are you living authentically as the person that you are, or are you putting on a mask? And sometimes that mask can look like lying to make sure that the other person feels comfortable with your actions or choices.
Or covering for that person, like lying in order to cover for them for other people.
Absolutely.
I've seen that happen a lot. And it's kind of sad because I'm sure I've done that for people. Like, oh, no, like, don't worry. Like, they didn't really mean it like that. Or like, oh, like, don't worry. Like they're not that way. And then you're putting yourself kind of at risk in these other relationships that you have.
Exactly. It doesn't feel great because you're constantly making excuses for somebody else.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like living on this tightrope.
Walking on eggshells also, yeah.
Yeah. You said something and it made me think about people pleasing in health.
Yeah.
And I think back to my first marriage. And I was 18 when I met him.
Wow, you were young.
I was young. I was still living at home with my parents, commuting at college, and talking about finding that voice. I really had like the voice that we all have as children, because 18 I was still a child, even though I thought I knew everything.
That's the funny thing is, like, when you're that age, you think you know everything, and then you're like, oh my God, when you look back, you're like, I really know nothing. And then that makes me, like, at my age right now, I'm thinking, oh my God, when I'm like 60, I'm gonna look back at right now and think, oh golly, you really thought you knew, you thought you knew what you were doing. Nope. Like,
Yeah.
And then it just continues. Like, the more you know you don't know.
Julie at Row House, she made a comment the other day where I was like, oh yeah, back in, I don't know, 2000. She was like, that was like 10 crystals ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, I loved the frame that she put on
I love
that.
her so much.
She's amazing. But just like that idea of like, that was 10 versions of me ago, because you're constantly evolving
Yes,
and growing.
for sure.
But with my ex, I was a child when I met him. So I definitely had not had my voice yet. Since then I've learned, your frontal lobe does not fully develop until you're 25.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I didn't live on my own. Like, I lived at home with my parents. Then I got married at 23, and then I moved in with my then husband. I never had that experience to find out what my voice was. And as somebody who was a people pleaser, I was like, how do I make my parents happy? Get all A's, be amazing at school, and how do I make now my husband happy? And I was a master at making everyone else happy except for myself. I thought by making other people happy, that is what it's essentially made me happy. And by the way, that's also called codependency.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because it's interesting when I think about people pleasing. My first question I was thinking of is like, if you're a people pleaser, are you trying to please everyone? And I think the answer might be no, because you might be a people pleaser for just one person. Or is that just codependency, and is people pleasing like you're trying to do it for everyone?
I think people pleasing, everyone's different, right? People pleasing is really a way to avoid conflict. It can be a way to avoid conflict. It can be a way to feel validated.
Maybe even safe in certain situations.
Absolutely. So if you've ever heard of the 3 F's, the fight, flight, or freeze response to danger.
Yeah.
The 4th one is fawn.
Oh, really?
Yes. So there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And fawn is when you take care of someone or something else in order to avoid the danger. So if you imagine that there's a crocodile coming at you, you can either wrestle the crocodile to the ground like Crocodile Dundee. You could run away. You could freeze because you don't know what to do, or you can feed the crocodile. And the people pleaser,
We'll feed the crocodile.
yeah, hoping that they will be the last to be bitten.
And then the crocodile ends up coming back to you repeatedly because you fed them and they're all happy and full. And they're like, what else can I get from this person?
Absolutely. There's an amazing book that I recommend to all of my clients. It's called The Mastery of Love, and it's written by Don Miguel Ruiz. He's the one who wrote The 4 Agreements. And he talks about that idea of like feeding the crocodile as a magical love kitchen. He talks about it as though if you have all this love for yourself, this food in your kitchen, you can provide it to everyone. And it's not in the people-pleasing way, right? It comes from a place of self-love and confidence. And when you are lacking that for yourself, somebody comes to your door and offers you a pizza. Now, granted, in the first case, somebody offers you a pizza, you're like, that's fine. Come to my kitchen. I have plenty of food.
Yeah.
But when you're lacking that love for yourself and you don't have the food in your kitchen, the person comes to the door and says, here's pizza. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm starving. Sure, I'll take it. Well, the pizza comes with conditions. And next time, I'm only going to give you a slice. And you're like, okay, I'll take the slice. I'll take whatever you'll give me.
And then a bite.
And then you're just waiting. And in the meantime, the person with the pizza might not be treating you the best and not be prioritizing your needs. And you're just like stuck in this cycle of waiting for the next slice because you're lacking that love for yourself.
From like self-confidence issues, then yeah. So if you, I guess the first step is identifying that you're doing this, like identifying that you're a people pleaser.
Yes.
But once you've identified it, what do you do?
There's a lot of steps to take. So
oh my God, like 100 billion probably every day.
100 billion. You know, so it's interesting because in my practice, I, market to people pleasers who want to take back their pleasure. Mm-hmm. And we talk about anything from just self-care, like feeling like they're a priority, to ways to make things work better in the bedroom.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. However, a lot of my clients who are like, I want the bedroom thing. I want to have great sex and they're not ready yet.
That's so funny because that would not be the first, like if I had a people pleasing issue, which I might, I don't think that like the bedroom would be the first place that I'd want to fix my issue. I feel like I'd want to fix it elsewhere first and then in the bedroom.
So the reason I've analyzed is that codependency and sex with a lot of people go hand in hand.
Yes.
And that is because of that external validation of if someone has sex with me, they must love me.
That means they love me.
Or even if they don't love me, I'm good in bed, or
they like me enough to do this, or they like me enough to call me. And then, God, I went out with a guy recently and I could kind of tell like we weren't going to hit it off because when we were at the goodbye party, he was the guy that texted me and like tried to hook up with me that night. I don't know if I told you, but like while we were standing there, he texted me and he's like, hey, you want to come over tonight? And I was like, I've never talked to this guy before in my life. He's like an Instagram celebrity dude. And I was like, no, I'm not looking for that. And he's like, well, how about a date then? And so we went out on a date a few nights later.
Okay.
And we just went out for dinner. And while we were there, he was telling me like, yeah, like my sleep schedule is so important to me. And I'm so sick of these girls that like I've hooked up with and I don't even save their numbers in my phone, but then they're texting me all the time to hook up with me. And I was like, why are you telling me this? I was like, this is really gross. Like, I don't need to hear this. And then it's like, okay, like I see what you're doing. And he's doing that with these girls though. Like these girls that probably are people pleasers and are getting validation from him because he's like called them a few times and he's the guy with the pizza.
He's the guy with the pizza. But so, if I may, let me ask you, what makes you think you might be a people pleaser? And follow up, what was like in your mind, or you can answer it in whatever order, that made you stop with this guy? Like, how were you able to identify it?
Well, I think with people pleasing, it's interesting because I genuinely just like love people. Like, and I love doing things for other people, but I find myself saying yes too many times to things. And I find myself saying yes to all sorts of things that I don't really want to do. So maybe in that way I am people pleasing. And perhaps I'm saying, I've kind of just been thinking about this when you brought up the topic of people pleasing, because it's like, I'll say yes to all these things because I want to do them all for people. And I realized a while ago, I had like a certain friend group and I realized that I was putting in all the effort into that friend group. And then if I was planning everything and then if I didn't plan it, they wouldn't call me. And so for a while it was like, oh, I want friends really bad. And I want friends my own age. And I want to be able to go out and do these things. But then like they weren't calling me to do them. I was always having to facilitate. And I realized that in a lot of my relationships, that I was always the facilitator for like setting things up and planning, etc. And so with those people, I just kind of stopped calling them.
Did you feel drained?
I did feel drained. And I'm an introvert, even though I seem like an extrovert. Like, I'm like an extroverted introvert. I like to talk to people, but I need my alone time. Like, I like to go and like turtle up and like watch TV and hang out with my cat and just like be separate from everything. And also there is comfort, for me at least, in being the facilitator in a friend group, because if I've done all the work to bring everyone together, then I don't necessarily have to participate in the entire in-depth conversations that they're having, because I'm there and I've made it happen, but I don't have to be like 100% energy on.
That's very interesting. And with the introverted energy, though, I'm surprised that like the one-on-one conversation doesn't occur for you, because that typically re-energizes an introvert, is the intimate conversation.
Well, there are some people that I have those conversations with, like my mom, for example. Like I'll be one-on-one with my mom a lot because she's someone who doesn't drain me. Mm-hmm. Or I'll be like one-on-one with like a best friend because like that person I know doesn't drain me. And my friends describe me as seasonal, which I think is an okay term to describe me as, because like sometimes I'm on, like when it's sunny out, I feel like I have a lot of energy from the sun also.
I feel you.
And then when it's like cold and rainy, they're like, oh, we won't see Gala for like 3 months, but we know she'll come back when the sun comes out. With that guy in particular, I find men fascinating. I just find the character of men. I go out with a lot of different kinds of guys. I've been like, seriously, I put that in air quotes, dating in Los Angeles for a little over a year now. And I think I tallied up my number recently of how many guys I've actually been out with on dates. I think it's like 63 in the past like year.
So that is over 1 date a week.
Yeah, and some of them I've gotten only one date. Like the majority is just like one date, and like you kind of just know that you're not like going out. And then some of them I've gone on 7+ dates with, and it's just like they're nice guys. I find men fascinating.
Yes.
They're totally different than women.
Yes.
I get along with men really well. I think it's because like my hobbies are mostly male dominant hobbies, like movies, photography, cars, etc. But when I first started dating, I was unable to identify F-boys and like guys that just want from you. And then over time,
you mean the you up didn't trigger anything?
No, it did. It triggered. I was like, okay. I was like, I know what you want. Mm-hmm. Like I even told him when he responded with that, I was like, oh, so that's what you're looking for. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, see ya. Like, I'm not. And he's like, okay, well, why don't we just get dinner then and talk? And I was like, okay, I'm free that night. I actually need someone to do this thing with I'm going to go do. So like, why not invite this interesting person, hear a little bit about them, and then like see where it goes. It was a non-starter with him. I was like not interested, especially hearing like that at the table, like Absolutely. That kind of conversation. I'm just not interested in that. If he had texted me again, we texted like a little bit, but like if he had asked me out again, like maybe I would go and just like see what it's like on a second time. Mm-hmm. But I'm not interested physically in a man like that.
So with this, I feel like I had so many thoughts as you were talking. Like one of them was like, I feel you. Like going out with guys, like when I was single and I would go on dates, I'm actually, there's a podcast that I'm on, 1,000 First Dates.
Yeah.
And we talk about like the worst dating stories.
Oh my God. Because, I have a few of those.
And it was fascinating because I was just like, same as you, like people who go out and they date and they're like, I hate dating. Dating is so terrible. And this online dating is this and that. It's all about the perspective, mm-hmm. right? And your perspective is, this is entertainment.
It is entertaining. And also I meet all different kinds of people. Like I went out with a guy like 2 weeks ago. He texted me and he was like, hey, I really want to go to this convention and I don't have anyone to go with. Would you want to go with me? You seem really fun. And I said, sure. Turned out he was like a sniper in the military and like had all these stories, and he works like a high profile job right now. And like he treated me to dinner and we just hung out and talked, went to the horror convention. I don't think I'm ever going to hear from him again. I don't think we're a good match, but I had a great time and I got to learn a few things. Some of these guys, like they'll tell me like all these facts. Like someone told me about like Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. That's why it's like Antarctica and Arctica, or mm-hmm. The Arctic, not Arctica. But the Arctic is because like one has bears and one doesn't. And no, you think it's one has bears and one doesn't, but it's really, can you see Ursa Major and Ursa Minor? Oh, and so it's like they'll tell me all these like fun facts, and then they're like, "Oh, you're so great at conversation." I'm like, "Thanks."
So, are you energized at the end of these dates?
Some of them yes, some of them no.
So the idea of going out on the dates, are you feeling like, does that feel obligatory to you? Does that feel okay?
The going out on the date does not feel obligatory, and sometimes I'll even have a date set, and like the guy will start texting me, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not really feeling this anymore, and I don't mind canceling. I've had guys cancel on me before a first date, and I don't mind it. It's like things come up in your life, or you just kind of, someone says something that you're not really so into, or like you see their Instagram and you see like, oh, they're in Ibiza with like a bunch of bikini girls, and like, oh, I don't really, or they're drunk on their Instagram story. Like, I've seen that before, and it's like, you know what? I don't really drink. I'm not trying to attract that kind of energy into my life.
And it's better to find out before you're wasting your time on the date. I agree.
And the thing is, it's like very few times do I feel like I'm actually wasting my time. I feel like the wasting of my time comes from either like the pen pals, as I'll call them, like they just want to text you, but never want to ask you out. Or if I went out with a guy and he was great, like a great job, great everything, just there was no chemistry between us. And by date 3, I kind of told him like, hey, you're a really great guy, but I don't feel any chemistry with you. So if you want to keep taking me out, you can, but I'm just letting you know, like, I don't want to waste your time. And he was very, very nice about it. And we stayed friendly. And
you know, the more I talk to you, I don't know, like, I think everyone has a little bit of it in them to please others.
Yeah.
I don't hear people pleaser
Thank
in
goodness.
you.
But you know what? I think I actually kind of grew out of it through all these dating.
And that's the thing, like life, the school of life will help with these things, but it doesn't always help everyone if you can't identify it or you're not willing to.
Yeah.
There's a number of things where, like, I could sit here and I can name off a list of, you might be a people pleaser if, and if you are not open to thinking that it could possibly be you, you will come up with a bunch of reasons why it's not. You'll be like, well, I don't have sex with a lot of people for validation. I just like sex. Or you might be like, well, of course I like making other people happy, but that's not people pleasing, because you could come up with a bunch of different excuses as to why it might not be you if you don't want it to be you, if you don't want to make the change, because that survival thing is real.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think about people pleasing though too. Like, it's not always negative, right?
Yeah.
I thought about this especially because, like, it was your podcast and like all of the like movie analogies and everything, and I feel like analogies help people understand. So I felt like people pleasing, when you first are into the people pleasing survival, whatever, it's almost like you're Peter Parker, right? And you just get bit by the spider and you're shooting webs and breaking windows and glass and shattering things. You're not really good at controlling this. And as you learn from the school of life or people around you, whatever it is, you can actually learn to harness your people pleasing and make it a superpower for yourself. So you're now swinging from buildings and you're a pro at it, because people pleasing, as long as you can set boundaries, learn to say no. And sometimes it's what you were saying, like, I feel like with friends, I'm saying yes all the time. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a no.
Yeah. And that's also something I had to learn from other people, like with the guy bringing the pizza box to your door. Like, if they're not like really excited to see you or like really excited to hang out with you, that's a no. And that's something I had to learn. And it does hurt a little bit at first.
It does. And it's a little uncomfortable, especially if you're used to saying yes all the time, because saying yes has gotten you some type of reward in the past. There's been some type of benefit. But when you can learn to set boundaries around things, you can learn to prioritize putting your mask on, self-care. Sometimes it's a walk. Sometimes it's a bath. Sometimes it's just saying, like, no, I need 5 minutes of quiet time. Like, I love my husband. He is the best. He's a talker. And I am too. But sometimes I just need quiet. And sometimes I have to look at him and be like, not right now. I just need 5 minutes of complete silence. And that is my self-care moment. And that gives me so much energy. But if you can learn to like establish certain boundaries and things for yourself, then people pleasing becomes this superpower that, because you've spent all these years making others happy, you like learn to read people better.
Yeah.
It gets you farther in your career. It gets you farther. Like, I feel like I'm a better mom because I know what each of my children need. And I know how to speak to them. They could have the same exact issue with let's call it with friends. And I know that one daughter needs to just vent and me to listen. The other daughter needs a hug. And the third one is like, let's go out and grab a drink together. And you have to understand, like being a people pleaser makes it easier to understand what other people's needs are.
And then if you have that boundary, you're able to say, do I need to help them or do I not need to help them?
Right. Or how far does it need to go? Or like I'm limited. Learning boundaries and learning like being able to recognize I was a people pleaser and I was like, I went through the whole dating thing and I looked back and I was like, I was a collector. I wanted to see how many, like it was a competition for me. How many of these guys that I go out with, can I get them to like me? And that was not a conscious thing. It was a subconscious thing. And by going through that process and being like, wait a minute, I have to see if I even like them.
Yeah, that's another thing is sometimes my parents, my mom specifically, she's like, Gala, we call you is it a mesomorph, a metamorph, where it's like kind of any guy, you can kind of fit with any guy. You can kind of find anything that they're interested in and you could slot into their life really easily. But do you actually like them or are you just able to kind of mold yourself into like what would be perfect for their
My
life?
brother used to call me a chameleon.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. So like my music taste, I'm sure you might be, maybe you can relate to this. I used to like love Limp Bizkit and Papa Roach. And then I was like really into DMX. And I was like, what music do I actually like? Like going back to that finding your voice.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a journaling exercise.
Yeah.
You know, I talked to one of my clients recently and there's a lot that goes on where she's like, she's not necessarily shoulding herself, where it's like, I should this and I should that. But the idea of her, the way the way she should act and be is based off of other people and comparing herself to other people. And I'm like, well, what do you actually want? Like, what do you want for yourself? Yeah. And there's this exercise that you can do where you're like, wait a minute, where did this idea come from? Is this from my parents? Because none of us are born religious or political or racist, right? These things come from people around us and our influences. And so you have to, at some point in your life, go, where did this thought come from? And do I still agree with it? And for some of the things, like you can, like I learned from my mom that you should help others. That's my mom's thought. But I do agree with it. So that is now part of my voice.
And you might even pass that on to your daughters.
Yes. I really, really like, I'm probably overcorrecting, but like my kids will come to me with like, Mom, what should I do? And I'm like, well, there's this side and there's this side. What feels right to you? One day they're going to be like, my mom never told me anything. She never taught me anything. I'll be like, I taught you to think for yourself. That's what I taught you.
That's what you taught them. It's amazing. Yeah, with music, it's funny. It's like I actually don't even like sharing music with people because it's like something so personal that I'm like, I don't know if I want to like share like my taste of like certain things with people.
Are you worried about what they'll think of you?
Yes. A little bit, yeah.
So is this the moment, Gala, that you share one of your favorite songs and you not care what people think?
Everyone knows my Carly Rae Jepsen obsession. Everyone knows that. That's the one music that I'll share with others. And I'm like, I love Carly Rae Jepsen.
See, and here's the thing, and I know the timer went off, but like that's the point where I tell my clients, be who you are. And the people who like you for who you are will gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
And the people who don't will leave. And that is less work for you because then you don't have to go through the process of cutting them out of your life.
That is so true. Oh my God. This conversation got so like personal. It's so funny. I never tell anyone about my dating life. Like I only tell like my gal pals, like you and Jill and stuff at rowing. And then like none of my friends know that I'm dating, which seems impossible since I'm going out on so many dates, but I just don't tell anyone.
Well, they're like, where are you busy tonight?
Yeah.
You're just not like, I'm going on a date. You're just like, yeah, I'm busy. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just what I'm busy. Like I never tell anyone. I feel like
Well, now everyone's gonna
now
know.
everyone knows. Oh my God.
63 dates in the past year.
Oh my Lord. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. But Krystal, is there any final thought you'd like to share with the audience?
I just, like pay attention. And if you are feeling like people pleasing is your thing, I'm like, can I plug?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm gonna plug you in a second, so don't worry.
Check me out on Instagram at Complete Coaching with Krystal. My website is currently up unless WordPress gives me a hard time again before I hire somebody, which is krystalcentinello.com. But like I do have a quiz on there.
Oh, great.
It is, are you a people pleaser? There's 7 questions and you can, take it and see if it resonates with you.
Do you coach for both men and women?
I don't.
So you coach specifically for women?
I coach specifically for women. And I mean, can I share a funny story?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. So I was like, I do coach couples. So I will
so you do like couple coaching?
Yeah. So like with relationship things and like that. So I will coach couples, but men only? No. So I got a free consultation calendar invite recently. And in the specifics were like, what are you looking for? I was like, well, I'm a people pleaser. And then there was something about reverse cowgirl. And then there was something about, like, I was like, no.
I'm a people pleaser in the bedroom.
I'm like, that's fine. Like we can talk intimacy stuff. Like I'm like, but like emotional intimacy is kind of where it starts.
Yeah.
And like for women, I'm like really big on getting to the bedroom part if that's where they want to go but like we have to start with the like, how do you communicate to a partner? I need you to pick up milk from the store. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't communicate that, then you can't communicate like, I need you to swirl to the left or right,
Yeah.
So, but like, I don't want to have that conversation with a man because I feel like not every man out there, but a few of them have come in with the intention of, but can I convince you to be the other person on the other side of that? And I'm like, no, that's not happening. Like, I don't want them like jerking off while I'm like trying to coach them.
Well, I've heard people, not coaches, but nail techs that will get men coming in to get a pedicure and because they're at a lower height and they're not wearing any underwear. And so they'll have to like get their manager and like have the man leave, or like waxers also who like will not wax men because of the obvious reasons. It's like they get a creepy man in there and then it's like it's over. So men, don't be creeps.
Don't be creeps. Or pay me thousands of dollars and maybe I'll consider it.
Thank you to my guest, Krystal Centinello, for coming on to the show. As Krystal mentioned, if you'd like to keep up with her, you can do so on her Instagram, Complete Coaching with Krystal, or on her website, krystalcentinello.com. I'm Gala Avery, and this has been The Gala Show. The Gala Show is brought to you by Avery.com. This episode was executive produced by Roger Avery and produced by Gala Avery. Music composed by Andy Milburn. As always, I'm your host, Gala Avery. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Despite me sharing the same last name with this charity, I don't have any affiliation with it, besides the fact that the issue is very near and dear to my heart. Did you know that in the United States, 2.7 million children currently have a parent in prison, and it's estimated that 10 million children have experienced parental incarceration at some point in their lives? I was one of these kids, and as an adult, I am really grateful to be able to give back to Project Avery. Their mission is to build leadership from within by supporting community through programs such as mentoring and outdoor education, and also to remove the stigma surrounding having a parent that's incarcerated. You don't have to feel alone. If you know a kid who could use these resources or would like to donate money or time to the charity, please go to Project Avery, that's AVARY.org, to check out what this amazing charity is all about. Again, that's projectavery.org. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.